parents abandoned me to build their own happy families, and now they want me back. But I hate them. At 15, life should have been about friendships, passions, and mistakes buffered by the safety net of parental guidance. Instead, my world revolved around two separate households where I was a burden. Neither parent truly had room for me anymore. It wasn't just that my parents had remarried. It was how their new families became the center of their lives, while I was relegated to the sidelines. My father, remarried to Kathy, the woman he had an affair with, focused all his energy on her son, James, and their new daughter, Jenna. My mother's new family was no different. Her marriage to Dave, while kind, revolved around their toddler, Sarah, and left me feeling alienated. Both households treated me like a guest, an obligation, rather than a daughter. My father's home was where I felt the sting of exclusion most sharply. Their world revolved around their small, tight-knit family unit. The pictures on the mantel featured smiling faces of James, Jenna, and my dad and Kathy. My presence only appeared in family calendars as a note for weekend visits. Dinner conversations would flow around me, focusing on schools I didn't attend, events I wasn't invited to, and shared memories I had no part in. When I tried contributing, my stories were met with distracted nods before the topic shifted back to Kathy's kids. I wasn't their family. I was a mild disruption to their well-oiled household. My mother's house wasn't much better. Sarah, her new daughter with Dave, was the clear priority. The living room, once a space for homework or watching TV, now revolved around Sarah's toys. My room became a storage space for things Sarah had outgrown. When I suggested a family outing like going to the park, I was met with thinly veiled excuses. "We're actually planning a picnic with Sarah's playgroup this weekend," Mom said apologetically. "But we'll try to do something together soon. Okay?" That soon never came. Promises evaporated into thin air as diaper changes and toddler milestones overshadowed my existence. Over time, I retreated into books and journals. Writing became my escape, a way to create worlds where I mattered, where I was loved, and where I was the hero of my own story. Summers at my grandparents' house became my only refuge. Grandma made me feel seen and loved. She listened to my stories, taught me how to cook, and talked about her own life with a warmth I never felt from my parents anymore. But even that sanctuary was tainted when my father announced a 2-week European vacation, with Kathy, James, and Jenna. The trip fell during my scheduled time with them. "Am I going too?" I asked hopefully. Dad hesitated, his eyes darting away. "We thought you'd enjoy spending time with your grandparents," he said. "We'll call every day and plan something special when we get back." The daily calls were brief and shallow, often filled with Jenna's excited chatter about castles and gelato. Each one was a knife twisting deeper into the wound of exclusion. When I tried to confide in my mother, her responses were equally dismissive. "Mom, can we talk? I feel so left out." "Oh, honey, it's just a busy time. Sarah's teething and you know how that goes. We'll talk soon, I promise." Soon became a broken record of empty words. One night, alone at my grandparents' house, the full weight of my reality crushed me. I realized that if I waited for my parents to notice or value me, I might wait forever. Hurt but determined, I packed a bag, wrote a note to my grandparents, and took a bus to Aunt Mary's house. Aunt Mary lived in a small, cozy home surrounded by a garden that bloomed year-round. Her house was a place of unconditional love, where I had always felt welcome. When she opened the door, her expression was a mixture of concern and surprise. Without a word, she wrapped me in a hug that conveyed everything I needed: love, acceptance, and safety. "What's going on, honey?" she asked gently. "I can't do it anymore, Aunt Mary. I feel invisible, like I don't exist in their lives." We sat at the kitchen table, a pot of tea between us, as I poured out years of pain. Aunt Mary listened without interrupting. "You're not a guest here, my dear," she said firmly. "You're family, and you always have a home with me." Her words felt like a lifeline. She helped me enroll in a new school, formalize my living arrangements, and rebuild my life. School became a fresh start, free from the shadows of my family's neglect. I joined the literary club and made friends who valued me for who I was, not as someone's forgotten daughter. The true test came when I had to confront my parents. Aunt Mary stood by me as I called them, her presence a comforting anchor. "What's this about staying with Mary? Is this some kind of teenage rebellion?" Dad's voice was tinged with irritation. "It's not rebellion, Dad. It's survival. I don't feel like part of your family anymore. I need to be somewhere I'm wanted." My mother cried, and my father argued, but I held firm. "We're your parents. We love you," Mom pleaded. "You can't just decide to live somewhere else," Dad added. "I can, and I have," I replied. "I need to be somewhere I feel valued." At Aunt Mary's, I found stability and encouragement. My writing flourished, winning competitions and earning praise from teachers. Her constant support reminded me that I was more than an afterthought. I was capable of creating a life where I mattered. Years passed, and I thrived, but my parents' attempts to reconnect felt hollow. Calls became sporadic, and when they did come, they were surface level at best. When I graduated high school, Aunt Mary stood proudly by my side, a testament to the power of unconditional love. "You've done so well, darling," she said. "I'm so proud of the person you're becoming." As I stepped into college, I pursued my passion for creative writing, determined to use my voice to share stories that mattered. It was both exhilarating and terrifying to finally be on my own, navigating a world where I could define myself without the weight of my parents' neglect hanging over me. My dorm became my sanctuary, a space where I could dream, write, and grow. Inspired by my past, I began working on a novel, a deeply personal story about finding one's place in the world despite family struggles. My roommate noticed my dedication, often teasing me about my late-night writing sessions. "You're always typing away. What's the story about?" she asked. "It's about a girl finding herself despite everything she's been through," I said. "Kind of a journey of resilience and self-discovery." "Well, I'm first in line to read it when it's done," she replied with a smile. Classes challenged me in the best ways, and one professor in particular encouraged me to aim higher. "Your narrative voice is compelling," Professor Harding told me. "Have you considered publishing your work?" The idea of publishing had always been a distant dream, but his words pushed me to take that leap. I began submitting short stories to magazines and contests. Though the rejections were plentiful at first, I learned from them, refining my craft with each attempt. Then, finally, an acceptance. My story on identity and loss won a regional competition. "You have a gift," Aunt Mary said when I told her the news, "and the world deserves to see it." By the time I graduated college, I had completed my first novel, a deeply personal piece that intertwined fiction with elements of my own life. Querying agents felt like an endless battle of hope and disappointment, but one day, I received a life-changing call. "We love your manuscript," an agent told me. "It's raw, authentic, and beautifully written. Let's talk about next steps." Hearing those words felt like stepping into a new world. My work, once a private escape, was about to reach a wider audience. The process of editing, designing the cover, and preparing for the launch was exhilarating and surreal. Aunt Mary stood beside me every step of the way, offering encouragement and love. The book's release was met with praise. Reviews called it a stunning debut and a heartfelt exploration of resilience and identity. Book signings and interviews introduced me to readers whose lives had been touched by my words. As my book gained recognition, something unexpected happened. My parents reached out. My father called first. His voice, once so detached, now carried a tinge of awkward pride. "I read your book," he said. "It's really something. You've done well for yourself." "Thank you, Dad. That means a lot," I said, though his words felt hollow. Not long after, my mother sent an email filled with apologies and regret. "I know I wasn't there for you the way I should have been," she wrote. "I hope we can start over." Their sudden interest coincided with my success, making me question their motives. I turned to Aunt Mary for guidance. "You have the power to decide what role they play in your life now," she said. "Make that decision for yourself, not out of guilt or obligation." With Aunt Mary's support, I agreed to meet with them individually. When I met my father at a cafe, the conversation was strained. He avoided eye contact, fidgeting with his coffee cup. "I missed a lot, didn't I?" he finally said. "I'm sorry for that." "It wasn't just about missing things, Dad," I said. "I felt like an outsider in your life. I'm glad you're seeing it now, but it's hard to forget." With my mother, the encounter was equally charged. She cried, apologizing for putting her new family first. "I should have fought harder for you," she said. "Maybe," I replied, "but that's in the past. We can try to move forward, but it'll take time." Both conversations left me emotionally drained but also offered a sense of closure. I realized that while I was open to mending our relationships, it would be on my terms. As I prepared for the release of my second book, inspired by themes of forgiveness and healing, I felt a newfound sense of peace. Writing had become not just a career but a lifeline, a way to process my emotions and connect with others. My parents' attempts at reconciliation were slow and cautious. We weren't close, but we were trying. Phone calls became more meaningful, and visits, while infrequent, didn't feel as strained. "You're learning, Dad," I said during one call. "It's not easy, but I appreciate the effort. It means a lot to me that we're trying," he replied. At a panel discussion on family dynamics in literature, I shared my journey with a room full of strangers. "My writing is deeply personal," I said. "It's about finding strength in the face of neglect and redefining what family means." The response was overwhelming. Readers shared their own stories of resilience, and I realized just how much my work resonated with others. Independence and reconciliation became intertwined themes in my life. I learned that forgiveness doesn't erase the past but can open the door to a different future. My journey was no longer defined by my parents' neglect but by my own strength, the love of those who supported me, and my ability to create a life of meaning and purpose. Through it all, Aunt Mary remained my anchor. Her unwavering love reminded me that family isn't just about blood. It's about the people who choose to stand by you, who see you, and who lift you up when you need it most. As I continue to write and explore new stories, I carry with me the lessons of my past. My parents and I are still navigating our relationship, but the control over my life and happiness is firmly in my hands. Each chapter of my life, both the painful and the triumphant, has shaped me into who I am today. And for the first time, I'm not just living someone else's story. I'm writing my own.